All right, my friends, if you were worried that I was going to spend more than 48 hours without talking about nu metal, you can breathe a sigh of relief because don't worry, Uncle Finn is back with a nice heaping plate full of nu metal nostalgia. Do you guys remember nu metal? Do you remember? I remember. Who remembers nu metal? I bet you remember nu metal. Just chow down on a nice heaping plate of these nu metal member berries. And what we will do today is take a deep dive into the world of Slipknot. One of the, I don't know, I feel like there's a big 6 nu metal bands, I think, 5 or 6. So we've got Korn, Slipknot, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and System of a Down, right? I think so. It's like a big 5, and you can't really leave any of those out, I think. You got to have a big 5. Yeah, maybe Deftones. Yeah, so it's maybe a big 6. In any case, today we're going to talk about Slipknot, and this is a tough one. So I will be ranking their albums, in my opinion, from worst to best. This is actually a tough one. It's a tough one because they don't really have too many stinkers in their catalog. So that's what we're going to do. I'll give you my thoughts. And really quickly, I also wanted to mention my Patreon. If you like what I do on YouTube and everywhere else, joining my Patreon really helps me do this full time and worry less about videos getting demonetized by YouTube or copyright claimed by labels. Patrons get all my podcasts and main channel videos early. There are members only channels in my Discord that I'm super active in. I also do giveaways. For example, I've been giving away a lot of Emo's Not Dead merch, and you can also have me review your music, artwork, or anything else. All you need to do is join my Patreon at the $10 level, and then every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, just drop it in the comments of that post, and then I will review it live on Twitch. So if any of that sounds cool to you, hit the link in the description of this video, and I appreciate your support. We will start with the worst album in their catalog, in my opinion, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat from, what is this, from like 96 or something like that. And this is before Corey Taylor was in the band. This was the very first thing that they ever did with their original singer, Anders. I thought this was kind of funny. I had never really looked into the lyrics or anything like that, but you can see here, Do Nothing Bitch Slap is about getting back at the left wing for trying to take away our guns and other personal freedoms. Kind of funny. Well, listen, they are from Iowa. Anyway, so if you've never heard it, this is the very first thing they did with their original vocalist before Corey Taylor was in the band. It's not good. It's not good. Got some slap in the bass, the tail end of the funk metal wave. Got our little Mr. Bungle part here. You can tell that they maybe listened to more than a little bit of Mr. Bungle, right? Sounds like a high school band, doesn't it? Sounds like a battle of the bands. And the vocals are really not good. Sounds like someone trying to do death metal growls like quietly in the room so their mom doesn't get mad. Yeah, like... Mom! Oh, shut up. I'm making my demo. God, Mom, just leave me alone. Oh, it's not Screamo. They're called death growls. Oh, stop telling people that I'm in a Screamo band. Oh, God, I hate you, Mom. I mean, it's not good. It's not good, which is fine, whatever. They were like literally a local band back then, but you can see what a big difference Corey Taylor made. Here's what's wild. They were objectively a local band. Corey Taylor was in Stone Sour at the time. And what's wild to me is like, obviously getting Corey in the band made like just a world of difference. But imagine hearing this version of Slipknot and telling someone like these guys are going to be like a Billboard, you know, top 3 band in 5 years. Imagine how crazy it would sound, especially because if you've never heard like the Stone Sour demos when Corey Taylor was in the band, there's nothing about this that would make you think that Corey Taylor was the guy either. I mean, imagine somebody said, okay, now that really crappy local nu metal band that you just heard, they're going to get the guy from Stone Sour in the band, and then they're going to be fucking awesome. Imagine how crazy it would sound. This kind of stuff dads think kids will really like. Yeah. Hard to believe, but that is indeed what happened. So my point there is not to dunk on, their early stuff. I'm sure they would agree with me that it's terrible. Point is that they got like 500 times better in like a year and a half, which is pretty amazing. So obviously that's the worst thing in their catalog. The Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat EP, not great. The next worst thing in their album, which I gotta say, Slipknot at their worst is still pretty damn good. And so I would say, in my opinion, the worst kind of real Slipknot album with Corey Taylor in the band, in my opinion, is The Gray Chapter, which is from 2013, I think. It's not bad by any means. And this is the first album basically with the new lineup. The first one with Jay Weinberg, Joey was out of the band, Paul had unfortunately died, and so this was like their first album with essentially their new lineup. And it's not bad by any means, but it's just kind of, it's good, but it's not amazing. Yeah, it has some decent songs on it. Like, I think this song's pretty good. To me, this, obviously it has that core Slipknot kind of feel. It just feels like it's missing something. Not bad by any means. So I would say, like, this is like an example of the better songs on the album. Like, that's probably the best song on the album. The other songs on the album, like Devil and I, which I think was the biggest single on this one, it's okay. To me, it just feels like Slipknot covering themselves. Almost feels like it could have been a Stone Sour song. Not bad. So to me, my take on this album is that this album was probably the best album they could have made given the circumstances, because for anybody who doesn't know, a lot of their best songs were primarily written by Joey and Paul. And so this is the first album without Joey and Paul. You can tell the other guys in the band, I think, are perfectly competent. Mick and Jim and stuff are certainly very competent and talented guys, but yeah, it just doesn't have the same passion. And it's like a whole new lineup after being in a band with the same people for 10 years or something like that. I don't think it's bad at all, but I think it's the weakest proper Slipknot album. But Slipknot is so good that even Slipknot at their worst is still better than, literally 99% of other bands. If not like 99.9% of other bands. It's still a good album. In my opinion, it's just the least good, So that's my take on it. Although I will say, I think this is one of their worst songs, Kill Pop. This is just bad, in my opinion. Like, this just feels like a Stone Sour song to me. I don't mind Stone Sour. Like, if this was a Stone Sour song, I don't think I would hate it. I just don't want Slipknot to be Stone Sour. You know what I mean? It's like, if this was just the Butt Rock band's Butt Rock song, I'd be like, all right. But when you give a Stone Sour song to Slipknot, that's, to me, what just doesn't feel right. Not the worst, but definitely not the best. The next one that I would have in the list is We Are Not Your Kind from 2019, which is better, I think, than a lot of people give it credit for. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's kind of underrated in the sense that a lot of people think this album was like total garbage. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's like garbage at all. I think it's like not the best, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say it is. There are some really good songs, which I'll get to in a minute, but like this is like literally kind of Imagine Dragons, right? This part here, they're doing the ooh ooh ooh, Imagine Dragons car commercial kind of thing. It's too Imagine Dragons for me. This part's cool though. I think this is good. This is Pissed. This does have some kind of underrated songs though, like Nero Forte. I think it's one of their better songs. I think this is a damn good song. Underrated. I think this is one of their better songs. Sounds pissed. So I don't really agree. There's sort of a narrative with Slipknot that the band has sucked, you know, for the past 15 years or something like that. And I don't agree with that at all. I definitely don't think that they're at their best now, but I think their last few albums are totally fine. You know, they have some good songs, some songs that in my opinion are kind of weaker, but I don't agree at all with sort of the narrative that Slipknot is washed up and they suck now or anything like that. I would say there's 2 or 3 songs off of every album at least that are like excellent. And to me, you know, if a band has 2, 3, 4 like really good playlist worthy songs on an album, I consider that a success. I mean, you can't expect a band to just like put out, you know, their all-time best material 25 or 30 years into their career. You just can't. I agree with this. I honestly thought for them being 20 plus years into their career, this album is immaculately good. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. So I'm saying that this is their second worst album of the like real kind of Slipknot era. But even then, Slipknot's second worst album is still better than like literally 99.9% of other bands. The next album, the third worst, so kind of the midpoint of their career, I would say. I feel like nobody liked this one, but I think it's good. The End So Far from 2022. I feel like this one is underrated. They might have the best batting average of any band in metal history, at least for a band their size. I would agree with that. They've never put out anything bad. The thing with Slipknot is everyone's always saying like, oh, when are they going to do Iowa again? And, you know, they're sort of expecting that. Well, number one, they can't do Iowa again because that was 20 years ago. And they're different people at a different place in their lives, and just everything about it is different. So it would be impossible for them to do Iowa again. However, I will say that, like, I think it's kind of unfair because I think on every album they have at least a couple songs that kind of get pretty close to that. And I would actually say that this album to me comes closest to maybe it's like actually their first album. So to me, the first album has this kind of like unhinged kind of energy where it feels like they're just barely holding it together. And I actually think this album has a couple of those moments. And I feel like they don't get a lot of credit for it. Like, I think this sounds pretty goddamn good. The headlining tracks in this one are really good, but the filler tracks were dog. Well, listen, 30 years into their career, can you expect them to have an album of like back-to-back bangers? I don't think so. I mean, how many bands? Isn't that the case for like almost every band? Put it this way. Most bands, every song in the album is fucking dog shit. So if all they have is 3 great songs and 7 okay songs, I still think that's pretty good. And I actually like this part. He does these like almost like kind of power metal-y type vocals or something, which are kind of a new thing. And I actually like it. I think it's cool. It feels like a new thing. I like these vocals. I think they sound cool. And by the way, when this came out, Corey was what, like 46, 48, something like that? Like, he's not young, and he still sounds like a fucking beast. To be able to do these kind of vocals at this age is fucking incredible, man. I think he has like a very credible case for being, you know, one of the absolute best, like probably him and Phil Anselmo to me. As far as like, you know, relatively like heavy vocalists, I would say both of them have a case for like the GOAT. The other single off of this, which I thought was quite good, was The Dying Song. This feels like very, very, very reminiscent of the first album. I think this sounds damn good. I kind of agree with this. I feel like they should move away from writing full-length albums and write more singles like Falling in Reverse. Their singles are fire. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. You know, at this point in their career, they have nothing to prove. Like, they don't need to put out albums. Just put out, when they have a good song, put it out. You know, there's no need for them to like do a whole album. I think this album was damn good. I feel like it is sort of underrated in the sense that like everybody shits on it and acts like they're totally washed up. But I don't know, can you listen to that and tell me that Slipknot is washed up? I mean, they still sound pretty damn good to me. Now, the next one, this is going to ruffle some feathers. I know a lot of people are going to be upset that I'm ranking this album where I'm ranking it, but this would be the number 4, I would say, is their self-titled album from way back in 1999. And I'll tell you why. I know a lot of people are going to be upset about this. I do think it's cool, but it feels very dated. It's not bad by any means. Like I said, I'm putting it above several other albums, but I certainly wouldn't put it in the top spot. It's great, but it's very dated. I mean, listen to this. It's cool, but it's pretty dated. I loved this shit in high school, but the rapping sounds really dated. Exactly. It was very cool at the time, don't get me wrong, and it still sounds good. I'm not saying this album is bad by any means. I'm just saying, personally, I wouldn't put it anywhere near the top. I mean, this part, like, oh, rough. I don't think this album's bad. Look, I put this in the middle. I'm not saying this album is bad. I'm saying it's very good. I'm just saying that for me, I can't put it in the top spot like a lot of people would, because I just feel like the entire rest of their discography to me is timeless. This is the only thing they've done. I mean, we'll put aside the first EP, but other than that, this is the only thing that I feel like is feels like a little bit a product of its time. I think everything else they've done sort of stands on its own and will still sound cool in 20 years. Whereas you listen to this and you're like, okay, this definitely came out in the 90s. But, you know, again, I think it's solid. So that brings us to the top 3. Now, again, I think some people are going to be upset about this one, but the third best album in the Slipknot discography, in my opinion, is All Hope Is Gone from 2008, which for some reason, a lot of people seem to think this album sucks. I don't really understand that. If anything, All Hope Is Gone, to me, is almost their most death metal-y album. I think it's really good. A lot of their most death metal moments, and me being, you know, I love death metal, obviously. So for me, when I hear stuff like this, I mean, this is some top fucking tier riffing. Top tier riffing. I think it sounds great. I also really love this video of Mick tracking this in the studio. You can see, by the way, for anybody who wants to know, like, if you're wondering how to get like Slipknot guitar tone and you're wondering how come this album sounds so good, and you think that it's the gear or you think that it's the producer or the budget that they had or anything like that, it's not. You've heard people say that tone is in the hands. This is such a great example of that being an absolute fact, that tone is in the hands. I mean, you watch him tracking this is just like absolutely savage. This is like beastly guitar tracking. He's playing hard as fuck, and that's the reason why this sounds so good. It's not the amp, it's not the production, it's just his fucking hands. I mean, that is some fucking beastly guitar tracking right there. That's the reason why they sound as good as they do. Another moment on this album that I think is pretty great, Vendetta, another very, very, very death metal song. I mean, this sounds like it could be like Vader or something, right? This is just like straight death metal. Some of their best riffs. I love the drum sound too. And my personal favorite Slipknot song, in my personal opinion, the best song in their entire catalog, in my opinion, is Psychosocial. This is like an 11 out of 10 song to me. Like this part here, love this song. I would go so far as to say that this song is one of the absolute best metal songs ever made. Like, this is up there with, you know, Cowboys from Hell and Raining Blood and, you know, Iron Maiden, like Run for the Hills. Like, this is up there with the absolute best songs in the genre ever recorded, in my personal opinion. It's crazy to me that this is from 2008, because to me, you know, people are still chasing this sound, and nobody's done it better than this ever, and they never will. Yeah, one of the best stomp riffs ever written, absolutely. So catchy, but still so heavy. This is a good example to me of Joey and Paul's genius. So as far as I understand it, Joey and Paul wrote this one. I think the band was just never the same without them. I think most people would agree. I mean, like I said, their other albums I think are totally solid, but it's that combination of Joey and Paul, I think, that really made the band at their absolute best. And I would say that, like, Psychosocial to me is like just the essence of everything great about the Joey and Paula era of Slipknot, and in my opinion, the best song in their discography. But that brings us to the top 2 albums in their discography. Yeah, RIP to both of them. Very sad. By revealing the number 2 album, I will reveal the number 1 album. I feel like, again, maybe this is controversial, maybe, but from what I see on Reddit and stuff, I feel like maybe people don't love this album, but the number 2 album, in my opinion, from 2004 is Volume 3. That would be the number 2 album, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly, I would be totally okay with putting Iowa at number 2 and Volume 3 at number 1. I think that's fair. You could really switch either one of them. Volume 3, in my opinion, is the best version of Slipknot that's like radio friendly, but still heavy without getting, you know, too dad rock or anything like that. I think they really just perfectly struck that balance. Yeah, the most radio friendly extreme band. I think they just perfectly struck that balance of still being like heavy and aggressive, but also you could play them, you know, on the boombox at the construction site. And there's so many songs on this album that are just legitimate all-time classics. This one, obviously, Duality, also another classic. I don't actually love this song, but objectively, I can recognize that it's great. Yeah, that's right. Volume 3 made the massive beyond what Iowa could. Iowa was just a little bit too much, you know, for radio rock. And this sort of calmed it down a little bit, but it still sounded like Slipknot. They just didn't go like, they didn't go butt rock. Just made it a little bit more radio friendly. There's also some moments on this album that are, you know, pretty out there for, I mean, imagine a lot of like kids that got this because they heard Duality on the radio and then they heard this. This almost sounds like Embodiment or something. 3-0, this one's pretty wild. Like when the blast beat comes in. Yeah, this here. This shit's pretty wild. So even though this album was like kind of calmed down and more radio friendly, there's still a lot of like really extreme stuff on it. I think it's awesome. I will say that I do think Iowa I put in the number 1 spot. Again, if you wanted to say that Volume 3 was number 1, I wouldn't argue. I think that's totally valid. But for me, I think Iowa is number 1 just because, I mean, I'm a death metal guy at the end of the day. And in a way, I feel like Iowa is like the most accessible death metal album ever made because it's pretty goddamn death metal. I mean, how low is this tuned? You know, Corey's vocals obviously aren't death metal, but the band's pretty damn death metal. He sounds great. Iowa is the most ripped off music to this day. Yeah, I mean, if you listen to any like metalcore or deathcore band now, pretty much all of them are ripping off Slipknot to some degree. Iowa is the best extreme metal album ever. I don't disagree with that. And I mean, I made a whole video about this, but you know, Slipknot obviously is nu metal, but they don't aside from, you know, a couple moments on the first album, they don't really sound like nu metal. They sound much more like thrash metal, death metal. You know, I mean, look, the first real song on this album opens with a blast beat, right? And this album went to number 3 on Billboard, I think, number 2 or 3 on Billboard with a blast beat in the first song. That is insane. I'm pretty sure that nobody else has ever done that. Well, there you have it, people. That's my ranking. Again, I just want to emphasize, other than the first EP, which I think is not great, they've never put out anything bad. Probably the strongest batting average of any metal band that's been around for as long as they have. Not a single stinker in their catalog. Even the albums that I don't love are still damn good. So that's my ranking. I hope everybody in the comments disagrees with me and tells me that my opinions are objectively wrong and tells me that they've completely lost respect for me because I didn't rank their favorite album in the exact place that I ranked it. But there it is. There it is, people. Deep dive into the world of Slipknot. It's not screamo. They're called death growls. Oh,